Good evening. Thank you for attending the UP North Rebuild Fullerton to Addison Public Open House. This is our second public meeting to inform the community about the project. This recorded presentation is an overview of the information being provided this evening. We encourage you to visit each of the stations to learn more and ask your questions to the project team. Before we begin with the project overview, it's helpful to note that Union Pacific, known to some as UP, owns and maintains the railroad property and also operates the UP North Line train service under an agreement with Metra. Metra is managing the design and environmental review process and would manage the construction phase of the UP North Rebuild project. The Metra UP North Rebuild Fullerton to Addison project would modernize the 120-year-old bridges and infrastructure from Fullerton Avenue to Addison Street along Metra's UP North Line. The project proposal calls for replacing 11 bridges that have surpassed their functional lifespan and can no longer be economically repaired and maintained. Metra has proactively been addressing future safety concerns to avoid failing infrastructure, and a similar project was recently completed to the north of this project's location, from Gray Street to Balmoral Avenue. It's important to note that the UP North Line provides rail service to passengers between downtown Chicago and Kenosha, Wisconsin, and is one of the most heavily used lines in the Chicago area, with more than 70 weekday trains that prior to the COVID-19 pandemic had an average weekday ridership of 34,600. Most of its stations have been in the same general location for more than a century, and this project would secure another century of connectivity for rail passengers and the local community. In addition to replacing 11 bridges, the proposal includes shifting the tracks approximately 20 feet to the west within the existing railroad right-of-way, constructing new retaining walls where needed, and refurbishing the existing Lincoln Avenue Addison Street Bridge. The permanent project improvements would only occur on railroad property and would not require any permanent use of adjacent property or public land. Benefits of the project include modernized infrastructure that enhances the safety, resiliency, and reliability of Metra's UP North Line rail service. In the community, each of the bridges to be replaced would have improved bridge underpasses with state-of-the-art lighting, and the currently deteriorating retaining walls would be replaced to support the new railroad infrastructure in keeping with modern engineering guidelines. Replacing the walls would also alleviate piecemeal maintenance needs of the existing walls. Overall, the project would minimize the need for maintenance, train service delays or disruptions, and work in the community, allowing for increased efficiencies and reduced operating costs. For reference, here's a map of the project corridor. The left side of the page is north and the right side is south. As you can see, the bridge furthest to the north, the Lincoln Avenue Addison Street Bridge, would be refurbished, and the 11 bridges south of it would be replaced. So you may be asking yourself, what exactly would the project be changing? Great question. Similar to the recently completed project between Grace Street and Balmoral Avenue, this project would replace rusted, deteriorating bridges, such as the existing School Street Bridge on the left. The project would build new bridges that would support new railroad infrastructure and be in line with modern engineering guidelines. The image on the right of the screen is an example of a new bridge from the Grace Street to Balmoral Avenue project. Additionally, retaining walls would be replaced, typically on the west side of the tracks within the right-of-way. As you can see in the images on the left of your screen, many of the existing retaining walls need replacement as they are leaning or are beginning to degrade. The image to the right is an example of new retaining walls from the Grace Street to Balmoral Avenue project. Similar to this image, this project is anticipating precast panel retaining walls with climbing vines that would vary in height along the corridor. Please check out our Community Voices station at the open house to provide your input on the retaining wall treatment. So where are we right now in the process of this project? Based on our initial timeline, we are right on track. We are still in the environmental review process required by the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, which is anticipated to conclude this year. We are also still in the design process, which includes detailed civil and structural engineering. Design will take about another year to complete. Construction is anticipated to begin in summer 2023 and continue through 2027. Metra is committed to updating the community regarding this project, and public outreach efforts like today's open house are an important part of the process. Metra has consistently been in communication with local aldermanic offices, community groups, and residents to inform them of the project and to listen to comments and concerns. An adjacent property liaison has also been helping coordinate communication efforts with residents and the project team. In late summer 2021, we formally announced the project and began outreach to inform the community about it. This consisted of aldermanic and community group meetings, a project website with details, a press release, local signage, and social media and newspaper announcements. In September 2021, we hosted a virtual public meeting, which you can view on the project website if you missed it. We also posted a frequently asked questions page on the project website. Since the first public meeting, we've been emailing and meeting with individuals, homeowners associations, community groups, and aldermanic offices. Through these meetings, we heard a variety of feedback, including that the retaining wall look and feel, fencing, and vegetation and trees were important issues to the community. At today's meeting, you'll have a chance to weigh in on these at the Community Voices station. And this spring, we have been promoting this public open house and are here today to keep you informed and help answer your questions as we're able. We'll also be posting an update to the frequently asked questions after this meeting based on questions and comments provided. Many of the aforementioned concerns are looked at as part of the NEPA process, which is anticipated to be completed later this year. This process, which is required for all federally funded projects, reviews a wide range of environmental concerns listed on the screen. To comply with this environmental review process, Metra is preparing what is called a documented categorical exclusion, also known as a DCE. Overall, no significant environmental impacts are anticipated, as the project would be completed within railroad property. For more details on this process, please visit our NEPA station at tonight's open house. So, what should you expect? As mentioned previously, the tracks would be permanently shifting to the west within the existing railroad property. This map shows the current layout, with 2 tracks offset to the east in the right-of-way, and future dimensions with 2 tracks offset to the west in the right-of-way. The 2 new tracks would be installed approximately 20 feet to the west of the existing tracks, which would be removed. An additional 3rd track is not being proposed with this project. The proposed track shift is a result of the need to maintain 2 tracks of Metra UP North rail service during construction. For the recently completed Grace Street to Balmoral Avenue project, a single track service was attempted, but this led to a significant disruption of train operations and an additional year of redesign and construction work. Metra is proactively trying to avoid these types of delays. To keep 2 tracks open during the work, construction has to be staged in the manner that we will describe in a moment. And we are proposing to shift the tracks west because there is more available space to the west, where a 3rd track was removed over 35 years ago, than there is to the east. As compared to other options considered, this track shift minimizes impacts to the community and avoids the acquisition of property. A similar track shift to the east is not feasible, as it would require a significant expansion of railroad property, leading to impacts to residences and businesses, including multiple large residential complexes. This would also lead to impacts to park land and playgrounds and require the permanent closure of portions of Ravenswood Avenue. Please visit the construction station to learn more about the additional options that were considered for this project. The next few slides are conceptual renderings to help illustrate what the construction work consists of and would look like. The overall project would occur in 3 stages and would be completed west to east. Note that the location and timing for construction is not yet known, and further details would be provided near the start of construction. The image you see on the screen is a rendering of the existing conditions at Roscoe Street, with the 2 tracks offset to the east. As you can see, there is additional space available on the west side of the tracks for new tracks and construction work, where a 3rd track used to exist and the 3rd track bridge bays still do. Stage 1 of construction would consist of demolition of the unused 3rd bridge bays west of the current tracks. Please note that vegetation removal within railroad property would be needed to accommodate the track shift and retaining walls. Limited vegetation removal within the public way and private property would be needed at the property border. Removal would be minimized to the extent feasible on public and private property. Also, note the new retaining walls that would be built during this stage. Fencing on retaining walls is a requirement for railroad worker safety and to detract from trespassing. UP North trains would operate on the current tracks during this phase. Stage 2 would consist of construction of the new bridges and tracks for northbound trains, which would be west of the current tracks. When those bridges and tracks are done, UP North trains would use the new track to the west and the old track to the east for service, while the middle bridge bays and tracks are demolished. Stage 3 would consist of construction of the new bridges and tracks for the southbound trains between the new track to the west and the old track to the east. When those are done, UP North trains would use the 2 new tracks, and the remaining old bridge bays and tracks to the east would be demolished. It would also consist of construction of retaining walls on the east side of the railroad property where required. This is a conceptual rendering of the final conditions for the new bridges. Note that all the improvements for this project would be completed within railroad property and would provide the community with modernized bridges and retaining walls. Here is another image to help you picture the improvements that would take place. This is the existing bridge at School Street. As you can see, the bridge and the underpass are rusting and deteriorating. You can also see the space on the west side of the tracks that is available for the project improvements. The railroad property line is approximately where the fence is on the right side of the image. Please note that, as mentioned before, UP requires the removal of trees within railroad property due to safety and ongoing maintenance concerns. This next slide shows the conceptual rendering of what the new School Street Bridge would look like. You can see the new bridge and underpass, including improved lighting. In front of the new retaining walls, there would be available space for new landscaping or other vegetation within the public way. Please visit our Community Voices station to provide input regarding what you would like to see for vegetation within the public way. It's important to note that the bridge clearance for vehicles would remain the same, and a sacrificial beam would be installed to protect the bridge structure from inadvertent truck or vehicle strikes. Also, current railroad standards require a walkway and other safety measures for workers on the bridges. As previously mentioned, construction work would primarily take place within railroad property. Staging or placement of construction equipment on private property would not be necessary. However, in some locations, temporary construction easements would be required to allow workers access to complete excavation, to install retaining walls and fencing, and to collect construction debris. Note that temporary construction easements are legal agreements with property owners that grant access to private properties for construction activities over a limited period of time. Locations of the easements would be determined as part of the design process and would be agreed upon and coordinated with property owners prior to construction. Additionally, some traffic modifications and detours for vehicles, bikes, and pedestrians would be needed during bridge replacements. To minimize community impacts, Metra plans to notify the public of upcoming work and closures, maintain traffic circulation with clearly marked detours and roadway modifications, and maintain sidewalk access on at least one side of the roadway where practicable. Furthermore, we will be hosting a third public meeting prior to construction to provide more details as it relates to construction schedules and locations, as well as providing construction notifications during construction. As part of this project, the tracks would be shifting west approximately 20 feet. We understand that some property owners are currently utilizing railroad property, some unbeknownst to them. Items on railroad property would need to be removed before construction, which is anticipated to begin in 2023, giving property owners time to move and adjust items accordingly. If you are a property owner with a lease agreement with Union Pacific, or if you are unclear about the location of the railroad property line, please connect with our adjacent property liaison, Melody Carvajal, who is on site at the open house. You can also email her at carvajalma@cdmsmith.com. Lastly, as it is a concern of the community, we want to ensure we are providing the most up-to-date information regarding tree and vegetation changes. Tree and vegetation removal within railroad property would be needed and may be required directly adjacent to railroad property depending on the planting or tree proximity for safety reasons and to accommodate the track shift proposed for this project. For private property vegetation, removal would be minimized but may be needed near the property line. Temporary easement agreements would address these areas, and best practices would be used to avoid incidental impacts. In the public way, we would minimize vegetation removal where feasible. Metra has been coordinating with aldermanic offices on potential improvements to the tree canopy and green spaces in the neighborhood. Metra will continue coordination with aldermanic offices and appropriate city agencies as the project progresses. We are seeking input on what the community wants in these public spaces, such as improved low-maintenance landscaping or community-led efforts for gardens and other landscaping. As mentioned, we invite you to visit the Community Voices station to learn more and provide your input. In regards to next steps for the project, design development and the environmental review will continue, and NEPA environmental review approvals anticipated later this year. We also plan to continue engagement and coordination with the community. In 2023, we plan to host a meeting before construction begins. We are actively seeking input and comments on how to improve the project for all involved. For anyone interested, comment cards are available at the registration station, which you can submit into the box at the Community Voices station. We are seeking input from the community at the Community Voices station about vegetation in the public way, retaining wall treatment, and fence options. You can also email us at upnrebuild@metrarr.com. We are seeking public comments by Monday, May 16th. If you are an adjacent property owner with additional questions or concerns, please email our adjacent property liaison, Melody Carvajal, at carvajalma@cdmsmith.com. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation and attending our public open house. For all up-to-date project information, please visit the project website at metra.com/upnrebuild. We encourage you to visit all our stations to get more details about the project, ask us your questions, and provide your input at the Community Voices station. Additionally, all materials from tonight will be available on the project website, and the Frequently Asked Questions page will be updated based on the questions and comments received tonight. Have a great evening.